Hi, I'm Dr. Julia Royston, bringing you another edition of Live Your Best Life. I am always striving to bring you people, places, and things, information, resources, and tools to help you, yes, you got it, live your best life. There's always some great books slid in there because, I'm a publisher and I love books and I strive to bring the best books to you and at least introduce books that you might not come across all the time. So I am going to let my guest introduce himself, tell us where he's from, and let us know exactly, first off, his website, if he has one, and where to find him on social media. Take it away, sir.
All right. Well, first, hello, and thank you so much for having me on. My name is Mwalim. I'm what you would, I guess, say an interdisciplinary artist. My work comes out in the form of theater, poetry, literature, music. I'm a well-produced playwright. My work has been presented throughout the United States as well as Canada, the Caribbean, and the UK. I currently have a novel, which is my first novel, called Land of the Black Squirrels. And let's see, Land of the Black Squirrels is the first book in a series called The Bronx Bohème. If you're looking for me on social media, you can find me on Instagram at Mwalim, and that is Mwalim. You can find me on Facebook, and hang on, I'm going to make this easy for everybody. Since we don't have a character generator handy, I'm going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. So, it's coming out backwards on my screen, but
yeah. But it's perfect.
Mwalim.
Right. So those watching the video, it comes up perfectly, Mwalim. But those of you who are listening on the podcast, it is Mwalim.
Walim. And if you're looking for me on social media, if you're looking for me, for example, on Facebook, you can find me at The Funky Professor. On Facebook at The Funky Professor. If you're looking for my website is thefunkyprofessor.com. And if you want to get a copy of my book or some of my music, you can go to thefunkyprofessor.com/Bronx Bohème. And another achievement I'm proud of, or I should say one of the achievements I'm proud of, I'm the keyboard player and songwriter for a band called the Groovalados. We're a soul funk band. Our album, Ask Your Mama, got 6 Grammy nominations. Our very first single, Do You Mind If We Dance With Your Dates, premiered on the Muscle Shoals radio show in 2016 and spent 41 weeks on the Indie Blues Americana charts. And I also, at this point, have to send tribute to my partner and co-founder who passed away this past Thursday of the Groovalados, Mr. Eddie Ray Johnson, a phenomenal drummer and singer. And he was a longtime touring player. He played with people like Rufus Thomas and Wilson Pickett, among a host of others. And in 2019, we co-founded the Groovalados. In 2011, we launched it. And it had been, so I wanted to thank him for 11 years of an amazing musical ride, the best 11 years of my life in the music business. And one other little piece to pitch. I'm also the proud owner of a recording studio, Polyphonic Studios, which we just opened here in Massachusetts. Well, sort of opened because of the COVID shutdown, but Polyphonic Studios, we're a full-service recording studio, and we also offer remote services and mixing, mastering, and editing for people who like to produce or like to record at home. So polyphonicstudios.com is another way to find me. I'm sorry, ma'am. I gave you a whole lot more than you bargained for.
You know what? Excuse me, audience, while I tackle all my worlds. That is one of the biggest things about the Live Your Best podcast, is that and broadcast is that I get to have all my worlds. And this Mr. Mwalim has gotten all my worlds packaged in one person. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Where do I want to start? I want to start. So, how did you know as a child? Let's go all the way back. How did you know as a child, musically, theater? I know how it was for me, but I want to know from your point of view. So, were you raised in a musical household? Was one of your parents very musical? Was there a teacher who greatly influenced you? And I really want you to speak to parents who have gifted children. So tell me a little bit about your theater creative, because you're in the creatives family, in a multiple creative life. You know, you've given your life to the creatives world. So tell us what young Mwalim was like.
Young Mwalim. Well, I do come, it's a little of all of the above of what you mentioned. My mother is an opera singer, well, now retired opera singer, but opera singer. And, but of course had an amazing soul and jazz collection of records. My biological grandfather was trained as a concert pianist, but when he came to this country from Barbados, discovered Black men were not concert pianists, and ended up becoming an arranger and big band leader, and was a producer for Decca Records and subsequently Southern Records. And he was actually my first piano teacher. My step-grandfather, grandpa, was a fan of the symphony. So I grew up listening to that. My godfather, this is where I get all my John Coltrane, Miles Davis love of music from. So it was
good stuff. The good stuff.
Oh yeah. So it was being surrounded by music and musicians, and it was, you know, developing my own love of music and particular styles and particular sounds that I gravitated to. I remember two records as a kid that I really just listened to in constant loop. One was Billy Preston's instrumental record Soul. And I've digested every single song on that record. In fact, it was really funny because many years later, I had the opportunity to play with the Junior Walker All-Stars and knew Shotgun inside and out because of Billy Preston's record. And another record that really, really resonated with me was Ramsey Lewis live at the Savoy. And so these were two pianists. Then of course, listening to Horace Silver, and the piano player who really became my capo de capo was Thelonious Monk. So these were the, you know, the listening influences that I had. And then I was in orchestra when I got to 5th grade, and my instrument was the viola. And my teacher there, Mr. Robert Silverbush, and the other teacher there, Mr. Robert Just, they were serious influences on me. And of course, getting to play with them was how I ended up getting to play at Carnegie Hall before I was 14 years old. And when I was 14, I went to Music and Art High School. I grew up in New York City, obviously, in the Bronx, but I went to Music and Art High School, which is now LaGuardia High School. And there, one of the beautiful things is that when you're a musician, you're basically just another face in the crowd, if you will. Excuse me. Because to give you an idea of who I was going to school with, I was going to school with people who are now jazz legends like Jay Rodriguez and Stephen Scott and Preston Fullwood, you know, names that you'll come across, Armando Colon, Leo Colon, these people who were music directors for everybody in the industry at one point. These were the kids I went to school with every single day.
Wow.
And Slick Rick was the year ahead of me. Dana Dane was my year. MC Search was the year ahead of me. And these were my high school classmates.
Oh my God.
So you get to be just another face in the crowd, and that was a beautiful thing. That, you know, the teachers, many of the teachers at LaGuardia were very influential. Dr. Paula Washington, Mr. Justin DeChocho, Mr. Jonathan Strasser, Miss Edith Del Val. These were all teachers who, definitely shaped who I became musically later on. So yeah, so definitely it's a combination of parents, it's teacher, it's environment. It's coming about in a time when you still had music in schools, when you still had a lot of instrumental music in schools, when the arts were considered part of a well-rounded education. So, it was a beautiful thing.
Well, I tell you, having now I'm a church girl, so I sang since as they say, the Sunshine Choir, and
Mm-hmm.
when I was 4 or 5 years old, to playing the flute and all the way through college, and so music has kind of just been in me. I had a lot of health issues when I was born, and when I sang, my parents are like, ta-da! I'm like, okay, we finally found the thing that this. Oh, okay.
The
So
lungs are good.
yeah. No, and then I started writing music many years later, probably within the last 20 years. So that was kind of my saving grace. I'm the little round girl with the round glasses, and had a lisp in my first and second grade, and had to have a speech, which you can't tell now, thank God. But had a speech impediment, but wasn't athletic. I wasn't doing all that running. No, only did gym because they made me. Yeah, but when I sang, y'all sit down. I'm gonna be the teacher here. I'm gonna take notes. So music has kind of been my saving grace, and the one thing that I knew I could do. That was my self-esteem builder. I didn't have all the okay, you do what you do. Oh, look at that. She's just a great gymnast and can tumble and do all of that. But this is what I do. Hold on. Give me the microphone and I'm going to show you some things. So,
There we
it's
go.
a wonderful opportunity. I mean, 6-time Grammy nominee. That is just like over the top. I got to fast forward to that because I can keep you all day long. But tell me, what is that like, knowing that when the nominations come out, and you are in a group that's on that list? What is that like?
Oh, yeah. It's interesting because one of the things that we learned was that the nomination is almost better than the win.
Yeah.
Because the nomination means that your work was reviewed by the Recording Academy and was deemed of a quality to qualify for a Grammy.
Yeah.
And it's especially saying it's of a quality because we're not coming from a major label. We're not coming with a major marketing. In fact, I can tell you very honestly, how we got picked up by the Grammys, we decided to do when our album came out, we decided on the regional level to do a very radical marketing idea. We put together a street corner guerrilla concert tour. And we basically went around to various cities around New England, and we, of course, went and checked and found out what their policy was for if people want to set up and play on the street. What do they need? You need a permit. And it was interesting to see how many cities have just basically free speech. So yeah, you can just come do that. But what we did was we ended up doing a street tour as a band, and we also sold tons of records that way, tons of CDs, I should say. I'm an old guy, so I'll say record, but
you fine over here. I remember those. My father gave me the thing, and had the 8-track with it and the cassette too.
Yes. Woo, there we go. There we go.
Ooh, yeah. Oh God! Don't come near my
big deal
order. Don't come near my table. Back up. You better get away from me. Oh yeah, my daddy. Anything I had it,
Understood. But we were selling CD, but we were selling the CD and we were playing, and that was how we ended up getting noticed by an international audience. And that was the next thing we knew, our record was in review, and the next thing we knew, we had made the first round of considerations for the Grammys. That first year, it was 4 nominations, and it was in the first year we were nominated Best Traditional R&B Album, Best Traditional R&B Single, and we got 2 nominations for Best Traditional Pop Singles. The first time out. The next year, we picked up a nomination for Best Rock Single, and we picked up, and this is off the same album, by the way.
Wow.
And we got picked up for a nomination for Best R&B Single.
Okay, so stop right there. So I want you to, because I'm always of the adage, if you do something and you do something well, it may be not the level of success of somebody else, but if you're really hungry and you're really committed to it, there's going to be a level of success. Sitting at home, hiding your gift and getting the no's, as we've seen, and you probably did see, oh, no, and no, and no. So what do? Is it, to me, it sounds like the Tyler Perry movement. Don't keep begging people to have a seat at the table. Just go build your own table. And then go build your own studio, and then go build your own house, and then go build whatever you're gonna do. So,
and that's exactly what we're doing. Or that's exactly the way that we did. Because with the street tour, one of the funny things was we set up across the street from a bar that used to hire us, and for whatever reason didn't want to hire us anymore. So we set up right across the street from them, and in 45 minutes made twice as much money as we ever made playing at that bar for 3 hours. And while we were packing up, the band that was going in to play was on their way in. We're packing up. We're like, counting our cash. But
right.
And busking, it's funny because my son, actually, his single and video officially dropped tomorrow. He's the ZYG. He's the ZYG 808, and he has a single called Thumpin' and a music video called Thumpin'. And it's so actually
jazz or fusion?
Hip hop.
Okay.
He's kind of a fusion because he has an album out now called Boom Bap Jazz, which is hip hop jazz, and because he's a jazz drummer. In fact, he was a student. His first teacher was my partner Eddie Ray, who just passed away, and so both of them were drumming for the band. We had a drum and a percussion. My son was the percussion, and Eddie was the drum, and they would trade off. But what my son started doing was he would drum and rap at the same time.
Oh my!
And what he was doing was, instead of cutting lawns like other 13-year-olds, he decided to go out with his cocktail kit and a bucket and was drumming and rapping on the streets and made some serious coin.
I was gonna say he didn't have.
Well, he said, it's funny because the line in one of his songs is, "You laugh because I'm a busker, but that makes me a hustler, steady on my grind, check me and you'll find." And, that line straight up, because he had kids who were like saying, "Oh, well, you were out on the street playing music." And he's like, "Yeah, and I made $3,000.
Yeah. How you like me?
How'd you do washing dishes? How'd you do washing dishes this summer?"
Yeah, how'd that work? $7 an hour. How's that working for you?
Yeah. So it's and also just trying to help him get a grasp of, because he's studying audio engineering now. He's 17 years old, and that's what he's in, because he's dedicated to music production. So he's studying audio engineering. He's intending to go, because he's finishing high school, but he's finishing high school through a dual enrollment. So he's actually using college to finish high school. Perfect. So when he starts college, he'll actually be starting as a second semester sophomore as opposed to a freshman.
I was going to say, my high school, I taught high school for 10 years, and I had seniors that by the time they started college, they were already sophomores and were graduating college in 3 years because they already had a year or two under their belt, especially the advanced girls. They just like, I'm already leveled, they would have almost 24 hours by the time they got to college. So it's a wonderful thing. So you're raising the next generation of artists, which is a wonderful thing. That's awesome. That really is phenomenal.
And that was what led to also building the recording studio. Is okay, so this is a family business, and understanding this as an art form and a business, and trying to teach that balance, that this is also how you have to, we also have to be able to control our own means and mode of production. It's no longer just about going in.
Exactly. Oh
because one of the things that I was able to show him was the budget to record 2 albums builds a studio.
Yes.
So now we can record, instead of 2 albums, we can record 2 million albums.
Exactly. And record other people and
record
fund expansion and
and make
upgrades to technology
and finance what we're doing by providing service to other people. Exactly.
right. Now, okay, so you've got to tell me, Polyphonic Recording Studio is where located?
Polyphonic Studios, because we also do video production. In fact, another sales pitch. Thumpin' is our first all the way in-house project, because we did the music video, and my first master's degree is in film production.
Oh,
so we did the music. So we did the.
Oh,
I didn't run down. I'm sorry, I didn't run down my academic side.
No, but that's okay, because we're gonna talk after. Okay. So
okay,
Polyphonic Studios is in where?
But Polyphonic Studios is located in Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts. We're right next to Cape Cod.
Cape Cod. Oh, okay.
But we've been working with artists. Artists will record at home and then let us mix it. So we're working with artists in California. We've got one client who's going to be sending us tracks from South Africa.
Oh yeah.
We've got people in Atlanta who are doing mixing and mastering for. The internet has opened up all kinds of.
I was going to say, it doesn't matter about that. Location is not matter. Okay, so I have one question. Do you do animation yet?
We're working on that.
Okay.
We actually have a couple of animators who we're bringing into the fold, so we will be doing animation very shortly.
All right, I know how to find you. You're not lost.
But
You're definitely on my radar.
By the way, we do for your authors, we do audiobooks and podcasts.
Oh, awesome. Okay, yeah. Okay.
And so even if they
Polyphonic
Studios.com.
Polyphonic Studios, and I know that's PHONIC, right?
Oh yes,
Polyphonic. All right. So we don't have much time. I'm sorry.
Our motto is, "You're gonna love the way you sound."
Yeah, I love that too. Okay, so you got to tell me about the book. We've got about 10 minutes left, so tell me about your book. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to talk to you later. Okay.
Land of the Black Squirrels is basically I was looking at where I grew up, when I grew up, and just the whole notion of growing up as a musician, and the fact that how that shapes your friendships, because then so many of your friends are musicians and artists. And I looked at community arts programs, and especially those community arts programs that sprang out around the country during the Black Arts Movement, the late 60s, early 70s. And the meaning that so many of those had, even down to the National Black Theater in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the New Federal Theater in New York City, the all of those National Black Theater in Harlem and so forth. Just looking at how all of these companies sprang up out of this, I wanted to write a book that sort of celebrated that, and also looked at the connective tissue of, when we look at our arts movements, they're always disconnected. There's the Harlem Renaissance. And then there were a bunch of Black people who wrote something in the late 40s, early 50s. And then there was a Black arts movement. And then there were a bunch of poets in the 90s, but they never make any kind of connective tissue of the fact that these people of the Harlem Renaissance were the teachers of the folks who were writing in the 40s and 50s, the Afro-postmodernists, as they were referred to, your Gwendolyn Brooks, your Richard Wrights, etc., and the Owen Dodsons, and that these people in effect then became the teachers of the Black arts movement. How many people know that Amiri Baraka studied with Owen Dodson at Howard University?
Mm-mm.
How many people know that the last poets were being mentored by Askia Touré, and Askia Touré had been mentored by Langston Hughes? We don't look at these various pieces,
right?
And the fact
the connections.
Right, and that Jim Spruill studied with Amiri Baraka, and then Jim Spruill becomes my teacher, and so here again we're looking at the Black arts movement, and the fact that it then has the impact on the era that I come out of, which they refer to as the urban expressionists, and how do we link that connective tissue? And of course, you look at the artists who are coming up now, and you even look at the fact that these basically are our parents and our parents' friends, and that these impacts come about then when the young people come of age.
Wow.
So why is it that the 15 and 16 and 17-year-olds now sound more like the 15 and 16 and 17-year-olds when we were 15 and 16 and 17 than say the generation that came in between? And why did we in the mid 80s and the people in the 70s? And I wanted to kind of explore that even in terms of musically and artistically. I wanted to explore that in storytelling form. So turned the idea into an allegory and the allegory into a folk tale and the folk tale into a novel. The novel actually, the first time I told a Bronx Bohème story was in '93, and that was at a storytelling session in Cambridge, Mass. And then I told a more expanded version, which ran for Cafe.
Gotcha.
And it was actually at the New Eurekan Poets Cafe, where it was then suggested, you should really turn this into. It was years before I sat down and actually just started writing the manuscript. And the funny thing is the characters had this tendency of coming to life in my head and telling me stories.
Oh yeah.
And I kept writing and writing, and it's like they're telling me more stories and I'm writing more stories. And it's like, oh wait, don't forget this. And so the original manuscript, I mentioned before, was about 800 pages when I'm like, okay, I got to stop here. And I then went and carved. So when you look at 274 pages, I carved it down to 274 and was like, okay, so now I guess I have the other 2 books already written. I can just look at the rest of the material that I have here. But so Land of the Black Squirrels is that first story. It starts in 1969 when Obatunde Bay opens an arts academy in the Northeast Bronx. And just as he's opening this is when black squirrels start to appear in the Bronx. And it's interesting because we also in the 70s have this period of white flight. So it comes by the time you get to 1980, the neighborhood has changed so much that even the squirrels are black. And that's why I refer to, so the Bronx is Land of the Black Squirrels, or at least that part of the Bronx. And so that's the story. That's where the story begins.
That's excellent. Excellent.
Takes us through the underground clubs of the 90s, the hip hop jazz movement. And it's also just trying to look at the connection, because people don't acknowledge this. If it was not for the Black arts movement, there would not have been a hip hop movement. Period. There would not have been hip hop.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so in the last thing, and then, I got to let you go. But the last thing is, given the global pandemic and given now for you as a studio, the art is still being created. Art is still being made. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be in the same space and at the same time because of technology. Right. We can transfer tracks. I do the exact same thing. I go in the studio and I don't play, so I have somebody else do the tracks and I sing on top, and then I bring singers in and sing on top. But really kind of speak to the up and coming artist, the person who is really kind of starting out. They love it and their parents are like, go get a job. So think about that 13-year-old, that 12-year-old self that is finds themselves standing on stage at Carnegie Hall, someplace that we all just would drool and dream about and think it's a fantasy. But to that person today, that it looks kind of bleak sometimes. The industry and all of that is really not for the faint of heart. You really got to have a love for it.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us from your perspective, given all your years of experience, what would you say to a young artist?
The get a job notion is, I don't see it as, what was it Barack Obama said, it's not an either or, it's an and.
Yes.
One of the best pieces of advice I was given by James Sproul was that a real artist teaches.
Mm.
And the other point that he made was teachers eat. That's what he said.
Always. We
So,
always gonna be eating.
so
Not steak, but we eating.
right. There you go. Well,
May not be
but
steak, but we eating.
this is it precisely. And what I found to be true was teaching artists improved my own work as an artist. He was absolutely correct there, because because you're constantly reviewing your foundations. Whether it's theater or music, you're constantly reviewing the foundation because you're going through it with a student. So this is going to now build your own foundation. But the other factor is, whereas they might not pay you to sing, they might not pay you to play piano, they might not pay you to sing and play piano, they will pay you to teach somebody to sing and play piano. Or they will pay you to play piano for a group of people that you're trying to, teach to sing. They might not pay you for that manuscript, but they will pay you to teach someone else how to write their manuscript. And the two end up, and so then the two end up going hand in hand. My most successful years as an artist are all running parallel to me as a teacher.
Mm.
What I forgot to mention in the things I do, I'm 16 years in, I'm a tenured associate professor of English and Black Studies at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. And hence the funky professor.
Gotcha. Definitely the funky professor. And remember, that's D-A and P-H.
Yeah, duh.
Duh.
Yeah, the funky professor, exactly. But wait, where is it again? But the fun piece of being, for example, a groovalato is now relating to, I'm going in the studio and you have a whole room full of kids looking at you like, what? And then you come in the next day with a CD and they're like, this is my professor? Yeah, this is.
Yeah.
Or even they go look at like Bevo or something and see our music video and they're like, that's my professor, so it becomes that kind of, it now becomes that kind of, you're putting theory into practice, so that becomes even more inspiration in a way. But just for everybody who wants to see the spelling, I'm just going to put it up again.
Perfect.
To find me. But yeah, my advice to young people is, yes, get a job, but keep doing your art. And then what you want to do is find a way to turn that art into your job, because I think it was Paul McCartney who said the first job of any artist is to create a job for themselves. That's the most creative thing you can do.
You got that right. That is the truth. Oh my goodness. Okay, so first off, you got to come back. And then secondly, because we didn't even get to talking about poetry, we didn't get to talk about, we got to bring you back to talk about book 2 and book 3 of that 800 pages. And then really talk about theater and combining that, really combining the theater world. So, Mr. Mwalim, it has been a privilege and a pleasure. More to come. I promise you. There will be a second interview. Thank you so much for being with us today. And look forward the announcement.
Thanks for bringing me on.
No problem at all. Okay. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Dr. Julia Royston, pleased and thrilled to have brought you this edition of Live Your Best Life. Have a great day.